Well, good afternoon and welcome to Intergovernmental Affairs and Justice. I'm Fred Bradshaw, the chair. Substituting for Buckley Belanger, we have Nicole Sauer. We also have with us Hugh Nerline, Erica Lawson, Laura Ross, and Corey Tucker. This afternoon, we'll be considering 4 bills. Bill number 149, the Regional Policing Amendment Act 2018. Bill number 150, the Seizure of Criminal Property Amendment Act 2018. Bill number 158, the Youth Justice Administration Act 2018. Bill number 169, the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency Act. We will be considering Bill number 149, the Regional Policing Amendment Act 2018, Clause 1, short title. Minister Tell, could you please introduce your official, make your opening comments, and also I'd like to remind the officials when they speak, could you please say your name for Hansard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my right is Neil Carcutt, Senior Crown Counsel for the Ministry of Justice, and to my left is Dale Larson, Acting Deputy Minister of Corrections and Policing. We'll have different officials come in depending on what piece of legislation that we're looking at. I'm pleased to offer opening remarks for Bill 149, the Regional Policing Amendment Act 2018. Mr. Chair, this bill updates the Act's provisions respecting regional policing. First, the changes will allow rural municipalities and other municipalities with populations below 500 to join regional police services. Although the Act currently allows for the establishment of regional policing services, rural municipalities are not permitted to take part in regional policing arrangements, except in limited circumstances. Additionally, the bill will make general revisions to clarify and enhance the regional policing provisions. Overall, these changes will provide greater flexibility for municipalities in the province to explore regional policing models that focus on safety and well-being of rural citizens. Mr. Chair, as previously noted, these changes align with the recommendation of the Caucus Committee on Rural Crime to pursue regional policing in Saskatchewan and form part of a comprehensive strategy to enhance rural policing. This strategy includes further initiatives such as the Rural Crime Watch program, the RCMP crime reduction teams, the Community Safety Officer program, the Protection and Response team, and a review of the First Nations policing model. Mr. Chair, with those opening remarks, I welcome questions respecting Bill 149.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any questions? Ms. Sauer?
Thank you, Minister, for your opening remarks. Minister, you had mentioned that initially rural municipalities weren't allowed to participate in regional policing except in certain circumstances. This bill, as I understand it, will now allow for rural municipalities to join in should they want to. Can you explain why this change was made?
Municipality and a rural municipality.
As was noted in my opening remarks, that rural crime strategy that went across the province, I think it was in 2016, 2017, that one of the recommendations that came forward out of that report and through extensive consultations was to explore more than what we've done with respect to regional policing services. And part of that rural crime report was really focused in obviously on rural crime, but ways in which we as a province can put strategies together that would actually address the concerns that were coming forward. We also had, prior to this particular Bill 149 being proposed, was to give the communities more option where we could have a rural municipality actually joining forces, so to speak, with a municipality itself. Before, you couldn't do that. This just allowed communities to have better options as they're looking at their total complement in whatever community that we're talking about. We did have one inquiry from a city municipality in the province prior to this being implemented, but nothing has occurred as a result of that to date.
Could you provide for the record what regional policing actually means?
Regional policing, I mean, you can have a regional policing service. So you join a number of communities together, so now you have a defined region for policing service purposes. This is not the same, this regional policing is not the same as provincial policing. This is regions that make sense coming together, possibly, if they want to. It isn't up to the government to tell people what to do in this regard. If communities want to, that they can take a region, an area around their municipality or around their rural municipality, and find out whether the other communities that would be in that area would be interested in joining forces for purposes of providing policing services.
Now, in many of these rural municipalities, they are being served currently by the RCMP. So how is this complementary to what the RCMP is already providing, or how is this different from what the RCMP does in these municipalities?
In actual fact, it wouldn't be any different with respect to providing policing services, but rural Saskatchewan is policed by, or generally speaking, is policed by RCMP. And the municipal areas are policed by the municipal police. So, I mean, the provision of policing services is, under the RCMP, involves a contract with the province of Saskatchewan and the federal government for the provision of policing services. Regional policing would require the communities that would come together to come to some sort of agreement as to what that policing service looks like for their particular area. So you could have an area of regional policing, but outside of that, out of that particular, and everything, everything's defined. I mean, you have borders for everything. For a particular regional service, because on the other side of that border, maybe that service may be provided by the RCMP. So, is it complementary? I suppose. If somebody decided that certain square miles around a municipality were going to be provided by a regional policing service through memorandum and through many discussions and negotiations, they come up with that to define what their policing service looks like for them. Then you would have the RCMP that would traditionally provide that service within that region. Would be looked at possibly, we don't know because we haven't had anybody coming forward. So, I mean, there's going to be options with respect to the RCMP, whether we redeploy those officers that would have been in that particular defined area, or we reduce the numbers with respect to our contract with the province, and then put those numbers, that money, so to speak, that we would have paid for RCMP, put it towards the officers that are now working in the regional policing service.
So just to clarify, this could provide a rural municipality with the option of essentially creating an area that they would then perhaps decide to have the RCMP not provide them that policing service, and then would instead create their own policing service for that specific area?
I mean, I don't quite look at it that way. I mean, it's what we're saying to communities is that, and with this legislation, is that there is an option for you now that you didn't have before. So whether they want to consider regionalizing their police service in that particular area is totally up to them. The RCMP currently will provide that policing service to the rural component. I don't think it's necessarily a question of we don't want the RCMP anymore. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's every community, every region would have something specific that to look at regional policing, that they want something specific in their region that they may not necessarily be getting at this stage.
But just to clarify on my question, that is an option that this legislation will be providing. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the rural municipality.
Okay, sorry. I didn't know what that was. An area, for lack of a better term, it depends on whether it's a rural municipality, a city, or whatever the case may be, defined region, yes, they can. They can come together as communities, as rural municipalities, and decide, you know, yes, we would like to have this area, regional policing, and work with the ministry officials, work with, I mean, the memorandums have to be filled out. I mean, it's not a simple process. But having said that, they couldn't do it before. Now they can.
And so then the next logical step, then the rural municipality would then be able to hire their own police force to work within that jurisdiction that they've created?
Yes. And again, those things don't happen overnight either. What we'll probably see at least at the onset, and please, Neil, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that you'll have a larger jurisdiction that has access to a substantial number of policing members getting together with a community very close to the outside of that, and maybe a few communities, and saying, okay, what can we do here? Do we want it? What kind of service are we looking for with respect to the provision of policing services? What are we looking for? And but the larger service is probably a big part of a regional, of taking a policing service and expanding it out of the traditional boundaries of the municipality.
Neil Karkut, Ministry of Justice. Yeah, that's correct. And I guess just to look back at currently the way the provision's drafted, in order to allow that, the only time a rural municipality could actually be included is when you already had two municipalities joining together and a portion of that rural municipality fell in between them. So hypothetically, if the cities of Regina and Moose Jaw decided to form a giant regional police service, that they might be able to include that strip of land in between them. What the amendments do is provide a little bit more flexibility. So if you had one urban center that wanted to form a region with a single rural municipality adjacent to it, that these amendments would allow that, because the current provisions as drafted don't allow for that type of arrangement. So it's really about flexibility for those communities.
If I'm wrong, but from what I understand from the provincial response team and the changes that have been affected as a result of that. The jurisdiction, the boundaries of our largest municipal centers, Saskatoon and Regina, the policing jurisdiction has expanded into more rural locations. Is part of what's happened there a reason why this legislation is before us today?
Yeah. No, they're two separate issues.